Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking beyond just the surface appeal of things. We're really getting into the core structure of visual communication. Charles Eames had that great definition of design.
Oh, yeah, the plan for arranging elements.
Exactly. To best accomplish a particular purpose. And that's what we're digging into today.
Right. Our mission here is to unpack that plan. What are the essential bits and pieces, the building blocks, and what rules guide how they fit together effectively?
We've got some great source material that breaks all this down, the elements and the principles of design.
Yeah, it's really useful stuff.
And look, the aim isn't to make you a pro designer overnight. Not at all.
No, definitely not.
It's more about giving you a practical grasp of how visuals work. Almost like understanding grammar helps you understand language, right?
Exactly. That foundational knowledge just empowers you. You can interpret things better, maybe even create more effectively.
And, thinking historically, the Bauhaus school in Germany back in 1919, they were really key in structuring this kind of design theory.
Absolutely. Bauhaus gave us a solid framework. And there's a really neat analogy in our sources.
Ah, the language one.
Yeah. It compares the elements of design, things like line, shape, color, to, say, words and punctuation.
Okay.
And then the principles of design, how you actually arrange those elements, those are like the rules of grammar.
Gotcha. That makes sense. A visual grammar. Okay, let's get into it then. Starting with the words, the elements, the basic ingredients.
The building blocks, right. So we're talking line, shape, color, value, and texture.
Let's kick off with line. Seems simple enough.
Well, yes and no. Fundamentally, a line is just a mark that's longer than it is wide. Or you could think of it as like infinite points strung together.
Or the path of a moving point.
Right. But even that simple definition, it has so much potential. Lines can be so different.
Totally. Curved, straight, thin, thick. And each one feels different, doesn't it?
It really does. Curves often feel, I don't know, more organic, maybe softer.
Yeah, while straight lines can feel more mechanical, maybe ordered.
And thickness plays a role too. Thin lines might feel delicate, while thick ones convey strength or importance.
And what about direction? Orientation?
Oh, huge impact. Horizontal lines, think of the horizon, they tend to feel calm, stable.
Okay.
Vertical lines can suggest height, strength, maybe even aspiration, like they're reaching up, potential energy there.
And diagonals?
Diagonals bring the energy, movement, dynamism. They definitely catch your eye.
It's funny how our brains fill things in, too, like implied lines.
Ah, good point. Yeah, like a dotted line, or even just a row of objects. Your eye connects them.
And psychic lines. That's an interesting term.
It is. It's about the direction someone's looking, or where something is pointing. It creates an invisible line that guides your attention. Our minds just do that automatically.
We're pattern seekers.
Absolutely. Okay, so from lines, let's move to shape. Basically, an area enclosed by a line.
Or defined in other ways.
Right. It could be created by a change in color or value or texture, or even just the space around other shapes, negative space.
And shapes are flat, right?
Yeah.
Two-dimensional.
Exactly. Height and width, but no real depth. That's different from, say, mass or volume, which are 3D.
So what kinds of shapes are there? I remember reading about different categories.
Yep. You've got rectilinear shapes. Think angular, straight edges.
Like squares, rectangles.
Exactly. And then curvilinear shapes, which are all about curves and rounded forms.
Circles, ovals.
Within those, you can get more specific. Geometric shapes are the precise ones. Circles, squares, triangles. Very orderly.
Then more freeform ones.
Yeah, natural or organic shapes. Things that mimic forms from nature, leaves, clouds, that sort of thing.
And then there's how we interpret those. Abstract shapes.
Right, or stylized shapes. That's where you take something recognizable, like a bird, but simplify it down to its core essence, like a logo. It's not realistic, but you know what it is. And finally, non-objective or non-representational shapes. These are pure shapes. They aren't trying to look like anything from the real world at all.
Just shapes for shape's sake.
Pretty much. Their impact is purely visual. Okay. Ready for color.
Always ready for color. It's so fundamental.
It is. And technically, it's a property of light. We see color when light is either emitted, like from a screen, or reflected off a surface. The specific wavelength determines the color we perceive.
Right. And there are different ways color mixing works, correct? Additive and subtractive.
Exactly. Additive color is about light. Think screens, projectors, stage lighting. The primary colors are red, green, and blue RGB.
And when you mix them?
Mix them all together at full strength, you get white light. The absence of light is black. Mixing the primaries gives you secondary colors like cyan, magenta, and yellow.
Okay. And subtractive, that's pigments.
Yes, like paint, ink, dyes. Traditionally, the primaries here are red, yellow, and blue, though printers use cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, CMYK.
So mixing RYB gives you orange, green, purple.
Right. And mixing all subtractive primaries ideally gives you black or close to it, usually a dark, muddy color. The absence of pigment is white, like the paper or canvas.
So regardless of how it's made, we describe color using 3 properties.
That's right. Hue, value, and saturation.
Hue is just the basic color name, red, blue, yellow.
Yep, simple as that. Value is about lightness or darkness.
Like adding white or black.
Exactly. Adding white creates a tint, makes it lighter. Adding black creates a shade, makes it darker.
And saturation.
Intensity.
Yeah, saturation, intensity, chroma, they all mean the brightness or dullness of the color. High saturation means it's really pure, vivid. Low saturation means it's muted, maybe closer to gray.
Yeah.
You lower saturation by adding gray, or sometimes the color's opposite, it's complement.
Okay. And the color wheel helps with this, understanding relationships.
Absolutely. It shows complements, opposites, and it helps understand color temperature.
Warm and cool colors. Warm colors, reds, oranges, yellows feel energetic, maybe associated with sun or fire. Cool colors, blues, greens feel calmer, associated with water or plants.
And designers use these relationships for color schemes.
They do. A monochromatic scheme just uses tints and shades of one single hue. It's unified but can lack punch.
Right.
Analogous schemes use colors right next to each other on the wheel, still unified, but a bit more variety.
Complementary is opposites, right? For high contrast.
Yes. They really make each other pop when side by side, but mix them and they tend to neutralize each other.
Interesting.
Then you have variations like split complementary, a color plus the 2 next to its complement gives you more range. And triadic uses 3 colors evenly spaced on the wheel. Very lively, often quite bold.
Lots of options.
Okay.
Moving on. Value. We touch on it with color, but it's an element on its own.
It is relative lightness or darkness. And crucially, how we perceive value always depends on what's around it. Context is key.
So value contrast is the difference between light and dark areas.
Precisely. Black and white give you the highest possible contrast. If a design uses mostly light values, we call it high key. Mostly dark values, that's low key.
And value does a lot visually, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Shading with value is how we make flat shapes look three-dimensional, give them volume.
And create space?
Yeah, atmospheric perspective relies heavily on value. Things in the distance appear lighter with less contrast. High contrast areas tend to jump forward visually.
It directs the eye too, right? Emphasis.
Definitely. High contrast grabs attention. A bright spot in a dark image, or vice versa, instant focal point.
And mood.
Big time. Low contrast can feel subtle, calm. High contrast often feels dramatic, maybe conflict. High key might feel happy, light. Low key can be mysterious, maybe fearful. Mid-range values can sometimes feel a bit somber.
And you mentioned visual weight earlier.
Right. Darker values generally feel heavier than lighter values in a composition.
Okay. Last element then. Texture.
Texture, the surface quality, how something feels or looks like it would feel. Roughness, smoothness.
And there are 2 kinds, actual and visual.
Correct. Actual or tactile texture is the real deal. You can feel it. Think rough canvas, thick paint impasto, collage elements.
Makes sense.
Visual or simulated texture is the illusion of texture on a flat surface. You can't feel it, but your eyes read the cues.
How do designers create that?
By mimicking the patterns of light and shadow, the value changes that define a real texture, like drawing the grain of wood. Also, repeating small marks or shapes can create a textured look. Even text itself.
Text. How?
Well, the size of the type, the spacing between letters and lines. It all contributes to the overall visual texture of a block of text. Dense text feels different than airy text.
Huh. Never thought of it that way. Okay, so those are the elements. The what now, the principles, the how.
Exactly. These are the guidelines for putting those elements together effectively for communication. And the key thing is they all work together. It's hard to totally isolate one from the others.
Right. So where do we start with principles?
Well, maybe the most important, but sometimes hardest to pin down, is unity.
Unity. Making it feel like one cohesive thing.
Precisely. A unified design feels complete, integrated. You see it as a whole first before you notice the individual parts. Like a good logo, it just feels right.
It connects to that Gestalt idea, right? Our brains wanting to group things, see a whole.
Exactly. Our eyes naturally look for connections, for order.
So how do we achieve unity? What are the techniques?
Several key ways. Proximity is a big one, just putting related items close together. Things that are close are seen as a group.
Simple enough.
Repetition is huge. Repeating any element, a specific line style, a shape, a color, a texture creates rhythm and ties the design together. Consistency.
Alignment.
Yeah, lining up the edges or centers of elements. It creates a clean visual connection. Think about text aligned in columns or pictures lined up. Grids are often used to help with alignment and structure.
Makes sense.
And then continuation. This is about creating a smooth path for the eye to follow. A line, an edge, a curve that leads you from one element to another. Implied lines work here too. It creates flow.
Okay, so unity brings it all together. But you don't want it to be too unified, right?
Yeah.
Boring.
Exactly. That's where variety comes in. Variety is the spice. It's about introducing differences to create interest.
The counterpoint to unity.
Perfectly put. Too much unity, it's dull. Too much variety, it's chaotic, confusing. You need that balance. Enough similarity to feel cohesive, enough difference to be engaging.
So variety means changing things up.
Yeah, varying the elements. Use thick and thin lines. Use big and small shapes. Different colors, different values, different textures. It's like variations on a theme in music. Keeps it interesting.
Got it. Unity and variety working together. What's next? Emphasis.
Emphasis. Crucial for communication. It's about creating a focal point, making sure the viewer looks at the most important thing first.
Directing attention.
Exactly. If everything shouts, nothing is heard. You need to decide what needs to stand out, like the headline on a poster.
And we create emphasis mainly through contrast.
That's the primary way. Contrast in anything. Line weight, shape, size, or type, color, value, texture, orientation. Put something different among similar things, and it pops.
What an anomaly.
Right. Or even just a different style. And placement matters, too.
How so?
Well, implied lines can point towards the focal point, or simply isolating an element surrounding it with empty space makes it stand out.
But don't overdo it.
Definitely not. Emphasize one or two key things. If you try to make everything important, then nothing really is.
Okay. Emphasis. Makes sense.
Now,
How about balance?
balance. It's about distributing visual weight evenly. Our eyes kind of instinctively seek balance, usually around a central vertical axis. If something feels lopsided, it's unsettling.
Like it might fall over.
Kind of, yeah, visually speaking. Now, there are different types of balance.
Symmetrical.
Right. Symmetrical or formal balance. It's like a mirror image on either side of the axis. Very stable, orderly, formal. Think classical architecture. Can sometimes feel a bit static, though.
And the other main type, asymmetrical.
Asymmetrical or informal balance. This is often more dynamic. Here, the elements on either side are different, but their visual weights are equal. So maybe a large, simple shape on one side is balanced by several smaller, complex shapes on the other.
How do you judge visual weight? What makes something feel heavy?
Good question. Several factors. Position further from the center feels heavier. Size bigger is heavier. Texture, complex textures feel heavier. Isolation makes things feel heavier too.
Yeah.
Darker values feel heavier. High value contrast increases weight. Quantity, lots of small things can balance one big thing. Orientation diagonals often feel heavier. Shape complexity, color brightness, or intensity. They all play a part.
Oh, wow. Lots to consider for asymmetrical balance.
It's more intuitive sometimes, but yeah, lots of factors. There are other types of balance too. Radial balance.
Radiating out from the center.
Exactly, like spokes on a wheel or petals on a daisy. Elements radiate out, usually evenly weighted, creates a strong central focus.
And crystallographic. That sounds complex.
It just means an all-over pattern, like wallpaper or a quilt or a chessboard. Lots of repeating elements with equal weight spread everywhere. No single focal point, uniform emphasis.
Okay, balance. Got it. Last principle. Space. We're working flat, but trying to make it look deep.
Pretty much. Creating the illusion of depth on a 2D surface. We use visual cues our brains interpret as spatial relationships.
Like size. Bigger things look closer.
That's a basic one, yeah. Mimics how we see the real world. Overlapping is another huge cue. If one shape covers part of another, the one on top looks closer.
Makes sense. What about where you put things on the page?
Compositional location. Generally, we read things at the bottom as being in the foreground, closer to us. Things higher up tend to read as further back, towards the background.
Okay. And atmospheric perspective again.
Yes, that comes back here. Making distant objects lighter in value, lowering contrast with softer edges, less detail. Maybe adding a cool bluish tint because cool colors tend to recede visually. It mimics haze.
And linear perspective. Vanishing points.
Right, the more formal system. Parallel lines appearing to converge at a point on the horizon as they go back. Creates a really strong illusion of depth and often a powerful focal point where lines converge.
And using these together makes the illusion stronger.
Definitely. The more cues you use consistently, the more convincing the sense of space becomes.
So pulling it all together,
Hmm.
understanding these elements and principles, it really is like learning a language.
It is. It gives you the vocabulary, the elements, and the grammar, the principles to both understand and create visual messages more effectively.
So just like learning to write means understanding words and grammar, learning design involves grasping these fundamentals.
Exactly. And you don't need to be an artist. Just start noticing.
Yeah, we really encourage you to look around. Websites, ads, art, even just product packaging. Try to spot these elements and principles at work. How is line being used? Is it balanced? Where's the emphasis?
Once you start looking for it, you'll see it everywhere. You gain a new appreciation for how things are put together visually.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with.
Yeah.
Consider how this understanding, this visual grammar, how might it help you communicate better overall? Not just visually, but in how you structure information, how you present your ideas in any situation. What grammar are you using right now?
That's a good question. Something to think about.